Have you ever stopped to think about, the hidden tech that keeps our world running? These sort of unsung heroes working behind the scenes, power everything, but we hardly notice them. Today we're doing a deep dive into one of those, cooling towers. And these aren't just big fans. They're crucial. They stop the whole industrial engine from, well, overheating. You find them everywhere. HVAC, industry, power plants. They're all about handling heat dissipation efficiently. So our mission today is to unpack the global cooling tower market outlook. We want to pull out the key insights on its growth, what's driving it, and some pretty fascinating regional differences. It's actually compelling how something so sort of foundational can show such dynamic growth. Okay, so the global picture. The market was valued at, let's see, 2,582.91 million back in 2021. Pretty big number. But here's the kicker. It's projected to hit 4,726.22 million by 2033.
Wow, that's almost double.
Exactly. That's a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR of 5.16%. So yeah, mature tech, but the demand still very much alive and kicking.
And that growth, that 5.16% CAGR, it tells a deeper story, doesn't it? It points towards these bigger global shifts. I mean, cooling towers are becoming central to optimizing how we handle heat.
Right.
Which, links directly to energy efficiency across all sorts of industries.
Right. So it's not just more factories.
Not just more. It's about this global push for efficiency, for sustainability. When industries grow, they generate heat. Managing that heat well, it's crucial for output, for keeping equipment running longer, and importantly, cutting energy waste.
Okay.
This ties right into things like net zero goals. So cooling towers are actually pretty fundamental to modern industrial development.
That's a key distinction. It's smarter industrialization, not just bigger. Now, if we look at regions, Asia-Pacific really jumps out, doesn't it? It's not just the leader, it seems like the leader, both in size and how fast it's growing. The scale there, it really struck me in the data.
Oh, absolutely. If you connect that to the bigger picture, like we were saying, it just underlines the massive industrial and infrastructure boom happening there. Cooling towers aren't just needed. They're kind of the heart of it. The market there is projected to go from just over $1 billion in 2021 to almost $2 billion by 2033. That's that strong 5.58% CAGR you mentioned, but regionally focused.
And digging into that, China and Japan are huge players in terms of sheer size. China's looking at maybe $554 million by 2033, Japan around $378 million. But the speed, the acceleration, places like India are really moving. A 6.35% CAGR, heading towards almost $300 million.
And you see significant growth elsewhere, too. Southeast Asia is projected around $190 million. Even Singapore is looking at close to $76 million. But, what's really interesting is the rest of ATAC category.
Yeah.
It actually have the highest regional CAGR, 7.36%. It's forecast to hit over $255 million.
Wow. So that suggests it's not just the giants driving this.
Exactly. It hints at this widespread industrial boom, maybe even a bit of a leapfrog effect. Newer developing nations building modern infrastructure right from the start, making efficient cooling essential immediately.
Okay, so that's Asia-Pacific explosive growth. You might think then that mature markets like North America would be kind of plateauing, but the source material paints a different picture, doesn't it? North America is still a major force.
Absolutely. Its CAGR is 4.61%, which sounds maybe a bit modest next to Asia-Pacific.
Right.
But it's still a huge market. Over $740 million in 2021, expected to climb to nearly $1.3 billion by 2033. The U.S. is the dominant player there, projected over $1 billion itself. So that tells you there's ongoing investment, not just new builds, but crucially upgrading older facilities. Efficiency again, longevity.
And it's not only the U.S. Canada is actually growing faster within the region, 5.84% CAGR, heading for nearly $155 million. Mexico's contributing over $100 million, too. So even with these established industrial bases, the demand for better cooling is strong. Modernization, maybe new sectors like data centers, renewables.
Yeah, that makes sense. Data centers especially are huge heat generators.
Right. Okay, let's pivot over to Europe, another mature industrial landscape. Is it just steady state there, or is there still some dynamism? The data seems to show, both stability and these surprising pockets of faster growth.
Yeah, and that raises a question, doesn't it? Why the variation within a continent like Europe? Overall, it was valued just under $490 million in 2021, projected to hit over $845 million by 2033. That's a 4.53% CGR.
Okay.
Germany and France are big contributors. France actually stands out a bit with a 5.33% CGR, set to reach over $114 million. But yeah, like in Asia, look at the rest of Europe. That shows faster growth, projected to more than double from $107 million to over $212 million. That's a strong 6.08% CAGR.
So what's driving that? Maybe specific modernization pushes?
Could be stricter environmental rules, perhaps, or
Yeah.
new industrial hubs popping up at different areas. It's definitely not uniform across the continent.
That nuance is important. These aren't monolithic markets. All right, let's head south. South America, the report shows some really solid expansion there, and you can kind of see how that connects to the broader economic development happening in the region.
Yeah, definitely. The market there is set to almost double as well, from $175 million in 21 to nearly $350 million by 2033. That's a strong CAGR, 6.05%.
Brazil leads the way.
Brazil's still the leader, yeah, heading towards $103 million. But look at Argentina. It's growing really rapidly, 6.57% CAGR, set to reach over $50 million. And you've got solid contributions from Colombia, Peru, Chile, plus the rest of South America is projected to climb over $149 million.
So that paints a picture of increasing industrial activity right across the board, manufacturing, resources.
Seems like it, all driving that need for cooling.
Okay, last regions. The emerging frontiers. The Middle East and Africa. Middle East seems steady, if a bit slower growth.
Relatively slower, yes. The market's projected to go from about $96 million in 2021 to just over $151 million by 2033. That's a 3.70% CAGR. Saudi Arabia will reach nearly $53 million. The UAE shows slightly stronger growth, 4.9% to CAGR, hitting over $15 million. It's solid, consistent expansion.
But then there's Africa.
Africa. Now that is fascinating. Arguably the most exciting trend in the whole data set, I think. It's really emerging as this high-growth frontier for cooling towers.
For a smaller base, I assume.
Smaller base, yes, just under $50 million in 2021. But it's projected to grow to nearly $130 million by 2033. That gives it the fastest regional KAR of all the regions we've discussed. A huge 9.02%.
9%? Wow.
Yeah, Nigeria and South Africa are major players within that. But again, the rest of Africa shows even faster growth, forecasted to hit over $67 million with a KGR of 9.36%.
Incredible. What does that signal, just massive industrialization kicking off?
It has to, right?
Yeah.
It signals nations building foundational infrastructure, boosting manufacturing, and efficient cooling is just non-negotiable for that kind of development. A really strong indicator.
So let's try and wrap this up. Summing up our deep dive. We've seen this global cooling tower market isn't just ticking along, it's really transforming. Driven by, well, industrial modernization, our growing needs for climate control, and these huge investments in energy-efficient infrastructure everywhere.
And the regional picture is so varied. You've got Asia-Pacific as the powerhouse, just massive expansion.
Right. Then Africa and South America rising incredibly fast, showing where future demand is really likely to boom.
While North America and Europe, the mature markets, they're still providing this really solid revenue base, focusing on upgrades, efficiency, maybe those new applications we talked about.
So the final thought then, maybe for you listening, what does this quiet, steady, but really significant growth of something like a cooling tower tell you?
Yeah, what does it say about the future of global industry? About our energy demands as they evolve? The push for efficiency? Even just how we manage heat on a planetary scale in a world that's only getting more industrialized?
It's a vital piece of the puzzle, often unseen, but it really indicates where global development is heading. Something to think about. Welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we're looking at cooling towers. Maybe not the flashiest topic, but they're these huge, often unseen structures that are surprisingly critical.
Absolutely. They impact so much, from the power grid to the buildings you're in right now.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack what we found in our sources about, what's driving their growth, the big challenges, and maybe the cool innovations coming down the line.
Sounds good. It's a surprisingly dynamic field.
So let's kick things off. Why are cooling towers suddenly, or maybe not so suddenly, becoming such a big deal? What are the main forces here?
Well, a huge piece of it is just the massive global thirst for energy. Think industrial growth, more cities, people having a bit more money to spend.
Right, that makes sense.
And cooling towers are essential, really, for getting rid of waste heat safely. Doesn't matter if it's older power plants or even some renewables, like big hydro plants. They keep things running efficiently.
You mentioned hydropower, and that's interesting. Our sources, specifically the IEA, point out that hydro is actually set to stay the biggest source of renewable electricity deep into the 2030s.
That's a key point. It really underscores this ongoing need. Yeah, it's not just about fossil fuels.
So a persistent need for these towers.
Exactly. And then you layer on top of that all the investment going into industry, especially in places developing really fast, like India.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, the IEA's India outlook. It projects their building space will double in the next 20 years.
Wow, double.
Double. And something like 70% of that new space is going up in cities. All those new commercial buildings, factories, they all need cooling. So boom, more demand for cooling towers.
And I guess sustainability fits in here too, like manufacturers wanting to be greener. Is that pushing things?
Definitely. There's a real push now for, more efficient cooling, lower emissions, systems that meet those green building codes and environmental standards everyone's talking about. It's part of the whole picture.
Okay, so demand is clearly up for various reasons. But let's get to the flip side. This is where it often gets really interesting. What are the major hurdles, the big challenges this market has to deal with?
Well, the big ones are pretty straightforward, actually. First, the upfront cost to install these things can be really high.
Right, they're massive installations.
Exactly. And then there's the long-term upkeep. Maintenance isn't cheap. You're constantly fighting things like corrosion, scaling, even biological growth inside the tower.
Biofouling, yeah. Sounds messy.
It is, and all that drives up the running costs. For smaller places, that cost can be a real barrier to even putting one in. So yeah, these maintenance headaches, they add up financially.
Okay, so cost and upkeep are significant. Are there like environmental red flags too? I think our sources mentioned some concerns.
Oh, absolutely. Big
Oh.
ones. The main issues are water consumption. Traditional towers use enormous amounts of water, and also the potential risk of releasing airborne nasties.
Like Legionella,
Love that.
that bacteria.
Precisely. Legionella is the classic example. So you've got these health risks, plus the sheer volume of water use, especially in places where water is already scarce.
And that leads to tighter rules, I imagine.
For sure. Regulators are getting much stricter, especially in those water-stressed regions. It makes those really water-hungry designs just less practical, less viable long-term.
All right, so costs, maintenance, water use, health risks, quite a list. Looking ahead then, how is the industry responding? What kind of innovation are we seeing to tackle these things?
Well, this is where it gets exciting. There's a really noticeable shift towards what they call hybrid and dry cooling technologies.
Hybrid and dry, meaning less water.
Exactly. They're designed specifically to slash water consumption, sometimes dramatically,
Yeah.
while still managing the heat effectively. That makes them perfect for dry areas or anywhere facing tougher environmental regs.
And is technology like digital tech playing a part? We see IoT everywhere else.
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing smart cool towers now. They're loaded with IoT sensors, monitoring everything in real-time: temperature, humidity, how much energy they're using, the system's health.
So you can predict problems before they happen.
That's the idea. Predictive maintenance.
Yeah.
It helps keep them running longer, more efficiently. It's all part of this bigger picture connecting to, rapid urbanization in places like Southeast Asia, Africa, South America.
Right, more big cities needing efficient cooling.
Exactly. They need cooling solutions that are tough, efficient, and can handle changing climates. Cooling towers, perhaps surprisingly, are becoming really central to that global move towards sustainable energy and modern industry.
It really brings it home how something that seems so technical, so background, like a cooling tower, is actually woven into these huge global trends, energy development and keeping things sustainable.
It really does. And maybe this leaves us with a thought to consider. In a world that's racing towards green energy and sustainable cities, just how much influence do these often invisible workhorses like cooling towers actually have on shaping the future we're all building?
That's a fantastic question to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep that curiosity going.